Why do I get nervous when I perform? It's one of the most common questions musicians ask. You spend hours practicing. You can play the piece perfectly at home, then someone starts watching and suddenly your hands tighten, your breathing changes, your mind races, you make mistakes you never make when you're alone. Why? Is it because you're not good enough? Or is something else happening? Over the years, music has taught me something surprising. The audience isn't usually what makes us nervous. The music isn't making us nervous. Even the possibility of playing a wrong note isn't really the problem. The nervousness comes from something much quieter. It's the stories we carry into the performance. Stories from old mistakes, old criticisms, old embarrassments, old memories that convince us they're happening again. Today I'd like to explore why our mind keeps replaying the past and how music offers one of the clearest paths I've ever found back to the present. Because perhaps the greatest performance you'll ever give isn't when you play perfectly. It's when you're finally free enough to play at all. Hi, my name's Mat Creedon and welcome to Music is Medicine. Today I'd like to explore something that changed not only the way I practice music, but the way I experience life. Because one of the greatest discoveries music has ever given me is that most of us aren't responding to what's happening now. We're responding to what happened before. Think about it. You play one wrong note and suddenly your mind remembers every wrong note you've ever played. You walk into a lesson and remember the teacher who criticized you years ago. You perform for an audience, and before you've even played your first note, you're reliving the performance where everything went wrong. None of those moments are happening. They're memories. Yet, they quietly shape the way we hear the present. Two students can hear exactly the same piece of advice, and one hears encouragement and the other hears criticism. The words were identical. The only difference was the past each student brought into the room. Music has taught me something beautiful. Every note only exists once. The note you played a second ago is gone. Last week's mistake is gone. Even last year's standing ovation is gone. The only note you'll ever truly play is the one beneath your fingers right now. When our attention is trapped in yesterday, we're no longer listening to today's music. We're listening to an echo. Then another insight arrived. I realize we rarely hear music as it actually is. We hear what we expect to hear. A student plays one unexpected note. Immediately the mind says, "I'm terrible." Someone else hears the exact same note and simply thinks, that's interesting. Wonder what happened there. The sound was identical, the interpretation wasn't. The mind is incredibly quick. It compares, it predicts, it fills in the blanks, sometimes before the note has even finished ringing. Music gently invites us to do something completely different, to hear each note as though we've never heard one before, without judgment, without comparison, without rushing to a conclusion. I sometimes think that's why beginners surprise us. They don't yet know all the reasons they supposedly can't do something. Their ears are still fresh. Real learning begins the moment we're willing to admit, perhaps I don't hear this as clearly as I think I do. That's not weakness, that's curiosity. And curiosity is where growth begins. Another lesson completely transformed my relationship with practice. I realized not every thought deserves to be believed. How often do we hear thoughts like, "I'm not talented enough," or "I always make mistakes," Everyone is judging me. I'll never be as good as them. They do feel convincing, but are they true? Or are they simply habits? One wrong note lasts less than a second. The story we attach to it can last for years. The mind is constantly commenting on everything we do. The problem isn't that commentary exists. The problem is believing every word it says. This is where the easy key became such a powerful teacher for me. Every note simply has a relationship to every other note, and that's all. The note itself isn't embarrassed. It isn't brilliant. It isn't a failure. Those meanings don't exist inside the music. They exist inside thinking. And here's the wonderful news. If I gave the thought its meaning, I don't have to obey it anymore. One idea keeps returning in my own teaching. Every thought is a command, unless we question it. Music gives us the perfect place to practice that. The next time a discouraging thought appears while you're practicing, don't fight it, don't replace it, simply notice it. Then quietly say, "This thought does not define my music." Watch what happens. Then came another discovery. The notes themselves are completely neutral. A note isn't born good or bad, right or wrong. Every note is simply information. Yet we immediately begin labeling it. I nailed that. I ruined that. I'm hopeless. But did the music say any of that? Or did our thinking? One exercise I love is recording yourself playing. Then don't listen. Leave it for a couple of days. When you return, listen as though you're hearing it as a complete stranger. You may be amazed. What felt terrible while you were playing may actually sound beautiful. You'll also notice something else. Often the criticism begins before you've even heard the recording. You're not listening to the music, you're listening to the commentary. That realization alone can change everything. Something else became obvious. Before we even begin learning a new piece, our mind has usually written an entire story. Like, this looks impossible, I'm too old, I'm too slow, I'm going to fail, yet none of those thoughts are contained inside the music. They're projections. The music simply sits there, waiting patiently. The ego loves creating heroes and victims. Sometimes we're the future virtuoso, and sometimes we're the person who never had enough talent. Either way, the story became more important than the music. So, today, notice every label your mind gives a new piece, such as scary, beautiful, impossible, easy, confusing, wonderful. Don't argue with the labels, simply observe them. Then remind yourself the thoughts are not the music. Perhaps the strangest lesson of all is that meaningless music seems to create fear. As children, many of us didn't start learning music simply because we loved sound. Well, I certainly didn't. When I first picked up a guitar, I thought girls liked guitar players. There wasn't much spiritual enlightenment going on. I wanted approval, I wanted attention, I wanted identity. Like most people, I thought that the music would complete me somehow. But what if music doesn't need to make us important? What if music doesn't need to make us successful? What if music is simply sound? At first, that idea can feel uncomfortable because without the story, who are we? The ego quickly invents problems. This piece is too difficult. I'll never get there. I'm not gifted. Fear appears, but look closely. The fear didn't come from the music. It came from the story. Fear is often nothing more than the imagination pretending to be reality. Common sense is usually a much better teacher. And finally, perhaps the most liberating thought of all, Music itself has never judged you. The guitar string never told you to quit. The piano key never called you untalented. The drum never compared itself to another drum. Music simply vibrates. The rest is our interpretation. Maybe the universe has never been against us. Maybe music has been patiently waiting underneath all the commentary, hoping we'd finally become quiet enough to hear it. Perhaps music was never the problem. Perhaps the story was. Today's practice, before you begin practicing today, close your eyes for 1 minute. Notice whatever thoughts appear. Don't change them, don't fight them, just watch them. Take one slow breath, open your eyes, then play your first note, as though you've never heard music before. Because in reality, this moment has never existed before, and neither has this note. Okay, until next time, keep listening, not only to the music, but to the stories your mind quietly wraps around it. Because every time you notice the story, you become a little freer. And perhaps that's why music really is medicine.